Morning, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order. And Director Sable, would you lead us in the pledge?
I will. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sable. Under communications and announcements, I do have one announcement I would like to read. As you can see, we are going back to meeting in public, and here is how and why. I would like to advise the public of a change in meeting format. As a result of the coronavirus pandemic, the governor issued Executive Order N20-25, which suspended some of the Brown Act requirements. Under the governor's executive order, the board of directors was authorized to meet via video conferencing, which also allowed members of the public to provide comment on agenda items remotely as well. As many of you know, the governor's executive order expired on September 30th, 2021. As a result, from today and going forward, the meetings of the airport board of directors will return to follow the Brown Act guidelines. Any member of the public who wishes to provide comment to the board regarding an item on the agenda may do so in person at the meeting or via email as outlined in the agenda. Remote comment via video conference for members of the public is no longer available. On behalf of the board of directors, I'd like to thank members of the public for their remote participation in board meetings, and we look forward to seeing you again in person. Do any of the other directors have any communications or announcements at this time? No, seeing none.
Mr. Chair, we do from staff.
Okay.
Once in a while, airports like this get special recognition. Because quite frankly, what we do on this airport is pretty impressive. We're not often raised to the level of national attention. But I think when we get to that point, when someone on our field gets to that point, it's important for the board to know that and recognize it. In September, we learned that our air traffic control tower was awarded a national award from the Federal Aviation Administration. Bill Fleischer, the tower manager, is here to tell you about that, and I think it's something we should be awfully proud of. That we're providing, Bill's team is providing a level of service to our users that is exemplary and recognized nationally. Bill?
Great. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to thank Mike for inviting me down. And this was a big deal to me and my facility. I've been here 20 years at the airport. I've spent my entire career, probably another 10 years at least here. So it's a really big deal for me. But the reason I wanted to come down is I wanted to tell the board that without Mike and his team, we wouldn't be facility of the year. Without the FBOs, without the pilots, the local pilots and everybody, we wouldn't be facility of the year. So it's really a team effort here. And like I said, I've been here 20 years, so it's really like a family. All of my staff and everything is excellent. And it's really awesome to work here and live here. It's just a privilege. So thank you. Thanks, Mike.
A pleasure. Thank you. Just so you're aware, it is the 2021 Outstanding Air Traffic Facility Award.
Fabulous. Congratulations.
Thanks. Very impressive.
We would normally shake your hand,
I understand.
Now, if you brought your notes and you want to stay, you can.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day. Thanks. Thanks, Mike. Thanks. Take care.
Okay. I'm a little rusty on in-person, so bear with me. At this time, we would accept public comment on non-agendized items. I do not see any member of the public here, so we will move on. We'll move on to item E, which is the consent agenda, and you all have the packet, and all of the items on consent were included in the packet. Would any board member like to remove a consent item? Seeing none, I'll call for a motion to approve consent.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We'll move on to the regular agenda items at this time. And item number one is Executive Director, you want to take us ahead?
Absolutely, thank you. You recall during the budget season, we talked about and the board approved a fee structure for the establishment of a business license. At that point, we taught a business license program on it. We talked about holding off on beginning to collect until January of 2022. To give us time at a staff level to communicate with our tenants and that this dynamic was going to be in play beginning in January. We've done that. The next step in that process is asking the board to adopt an ordinance number 928 that our legal counsel has drafted, and I'll ask him to run through that with you, and will be available for questions. But this is a pass to print, so it needs to come to you today, then come back to you a day in November, so that it can be dealt with twice in public before it becomes an official ordinance. This timeline gives us the ability to start on January 1st after we have the budget.
So we'll not be asked to adopt until November.
The process is you accept it, it is printed, it comes back, and it's back.
So let me, so the process to adopt an ordinance is it requires at least one public meeting, and it requires at least publication in a newspaper of general circulation at least one time. There are two methods to do that. The airport uses the pass to print method to save money on or to potentially save money on advertising. If you were to look at it and say, we don't want this, then it would never be printed. So you would, if you approve of this ordinance with modification or as is, then you pass it, we publish it in the newspaper, it will come back for a second reading at the next meeting, and then as a public hearing, and then it would be adopted after the second approval, and then it would be enacted 30 days after that.
So the answer to my question is you are asking board approval.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, we are.
Okay.
The board approval, but not adoption of the ordinance.
Got it.
Not adopted until the November.
Okay. That's it.
So generally speaking, I'm just going to talk in general terms, but if you want to interrupt and ask questions, please do as I talk about this. Most cities have and most public agencies that have a zoning component, which the airport does. They require businesses to register and obtain a business license. The purpose of a business license is, there are many purposes to it, but among them are, it provides an opportunity for the agency to have, number one, a register of all the businesses that are operating. This is important for public safety reasons, for fire, for police. It gives contact information for any businesses. If, for example, a patrol is going on at night and they see, for example, a broken window or a door that's that's open, they're able to contact the business owners in the middle of the night and get items resolved from a public safety standpoint. It also gives the ability for, in this instance, the airport to do fire inspections, building inspections, to make sure that the businesses are operating in a manner that's safe for the public to patronize those businesses. And there's a host of other public policy reasons to have a business license. The fee structure is one that you are able to recover. The fee that's charged for each business must approximate the value of providing the service to that business. In this instance, the airport does have the fire marshal inspect every year. We have building officials that will go out. I think the airport engineer is one of them that goes out. We're gonna have someone from staff go out from the business licensing office, to go and make sure that all the codes are being complied with. We had estimated that the costs to provide that service, the actual costs, are a little bit over $1,000 based on the time it will take at each business,
Per business.
per business. So-
There's 24 businesses on airport.
Yeah, so as it outlined, given that $1,000 is it can be a fairly onerous fee for some businesses, we recommend that fee be reduced to $500. You can charge less, but you can't charge more. If you charge more, it's a tax and it has to be approved by the voters. And frankly, you wouldn't be able to do that now since the passage of, I forget the legislation in the 80s or early 90s that prevented that. In any event, so the business license ordinance that is attached would apply to all businesses that are operating at the airport. Now, some businesses, while it technically quote applies to them, they are exempt. For example, taxi cabs, TNCs like Uber, Lyft, they're exempt from that because they have state licensing, right? We also, by the way, have contracts with them.
I was gonna say they pay us, but
We've
in
got-
a different.
Yeah, we've got separate contracts with them, so they pay us as directed up, we said, from a separate bucket, so to speak. This would require every business to pull a business license. I'll use the term application, it's a form that they fill out. It'll provide emergency contact information, address, cell phone numbers, emergency contact if we need it. And we'll keep, of course, we'll issue a license to them, they can post it. And we'll, of course, perform the inspections on an annual basis. Every year, we're gonna be doing this. I'm happy to go through the ordinance if you like. There's not a lot of detail to it, but really what it does is it defines what is a business, what is operating on the airport mean. We've got a map that applies, so we know exactly what businesses to which it will apply. We do require them to have insurance, of course. It's got all the details related to the business license in the ordinance itself. But I'm happy to go through them if you'd like.
So Scott, can I just make a suggestion? We did go through this at length at the lease committee meeting. And what I would like to suggest this morning, if it's okay with my fellow board members, is that if any of the board members have particular questions to a component, please bring them up in a form of a question rather than taking the time to go through the entire document. Is that acceptable to my directors?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So
I do have to say, I do believe this should come before finance, since it does have a financial component, and I understand to say that. This is fine, but it also should be.
Okay. So at this point, would you like us to just begin with our questions? All right. Director Miller, you've got a pretty good grip on this lease. You want to kick it off, or want me to go somewhere else?
Well, no, I can start off. We did talk about this at length in the lease. We did propose a sliding scale for bigger businesses as opposed to smaller businesses, but our council told us that really wouldn't be possible. We have to treat everybody equally. So I understand the importance of everything. And I've been a long proponent of having business licenses. I do think it gives us some control over here. We had a lot of businesses that were popping up, working out of hangars and backs of cars. Go ahead, you were going to say.
I wanted to back up actually to something you said, because what you said caused me to confer with some colleagues and do some additional research. And related to you use the term sliding scale. I'm going to use a different metric. The size of the business the state of California has, in many instances, issued regulations that apply to businesses of different sizes, and the larger you are, the more onerous the regulation. Let me give you one example. One of them is the recent AB 1825, which is the harassment avoidance training for all companies of, I think it's now, I think 25 or more, but it used to, I think it was 50 or more, right? In conferring with, I actually talked with 3 different public agencies that have different rates for different sizes of businesses. They utilize the state's categorization of businesses by size. They've adopted that same reasoning, which I think is justifiable based on the state doing it. Where you could say, for example, businesses over a certain number, it's X number of dollars. Businesses, and I'm just going to use an example, 5 people or less, 5 employees or less, could pay one rate. Larger than that, pay another rate. I think in talking with one attorney, and I think this logic is sound, the more variation you have, the more susceptible you are to a challenge, the more, so I would say have fewer divisions than more divisions. I wouldn't say, okay, 1 to 5 employees is one rate, 5 to 10 employees is another rate, 10 to 15 is another rate. I would suggest having less rather than more. I would say maybe if you're gonna split it, have maybe 2 or 3 at the most. Given you got 24 businesses, I'm not sure you have many, 500 plus operations, that are occurring here on airport property. I'm not sure that you're ever gonna have any that large. And so I think you'd be able to justify 5 or less or greater than 5 employees. I think that would be a good dividing line. That number could be 10 or less or more than 10. But I did some additional research on that based on the discussion that we had, and I think you can do that justifiably.
Oh, well, that's the change, and
It is.
and I would recommend that we go in that direction. Unfortunately, the lease committee did not hash those out with the recommendation. So
Right.
I know if we want to put that
Thank you. Okay, we're back on the air, and so we can proceed with Director Love.
So I have believed for 13 years and have occasionally popped up and said, I think we need this. So I'm a proponent of this. I see business licenses that are based on annual fees, and I've seen them based on personnel size. I've seen them based on some years. Do we know what our lowest income producing business is on there?
One employee.
But I mean, that person could be making 150,000 a
That's
year,
correct.
so
We do not have.
You have no idea what
Yeah,
they're-
we don't know what the record
Yes.
is. No.
I don't believe that $500 is onerous to anybody, and I'm against a sliding scale because of that. But I just think this is something to let us know who's on the airport for public safety. It's not an onerous piece, and I don't want to burden staff with they have to go out and count noses or collect a report every year on how many employees you have, which is what happens. If you have a business, then every year, first of all, you get the survey, how many employees do you have, what's your annual income, blah, blah. If we have to do that, that's another whole step in the process. To me, it doesn't make any sense for an operation of our size or of the size of the people that are on the board. And, case in point was that party place that got up and running that we had no idea over on the north side. Fortunately, we closed it down before they had one of their big events. But had we had a business license fee and the primary tenant, because that was the subtenant, the primary tenant would have known that, and we would have been able, in my mind, to really enforce it better, saying you don't have this, or that person could have said, go to the office and get a business license fee, and then it never would have started. So I do believe that it's important that we know who's on the airport, what they're doing, and that we charge a nominal fee for it. Question I have, since we contract with Monterey Fire, are they out every year now doing a fire inspection of every place?
They are. Yeah.
So that's already in place.
Yeah.
And it's part of that contract, which we're actually paying for because it's part of what they are charging us for as part of the service that they provide us, correct? Okay. So I think, and I went to look this morning, I should have looked yesterday, in the rates and fees, we just put a placeholder with no dollar amount.
Actually, in the rates and charges schedule that was adopted at $1,000 per business. That's what was adopted by the board during the budget. So,
Per business.
Per business.
So we had $24,000 total in the budget.
Right, we do, only beginning in January, so it's not a full 20.
Right, I remember that.
Program. And we believe that the cost of the service delivery is about $1,100. That's where the 1,000 came from. The sky indicated it's clearly the board's choice. It is staff's recommendation that we set it at a flat rate of $500 per business. You can always next year grow that anytime you like. But after discussion at the board level during the budget and at finance committee during the budget.
$500 to Director Miller. Glad you're.
That's the first one.
We don't think you're paying attention. I guess since it went before the lease committee, you don't have anything else to have to learn.
So, but I think there was discussion at the board level during budget season before adoption that you wanted to revisit that $1,000. Something on $1,000. It's a little bit more palatable, at least at the initial phase.
Okay, well, I didn't remember that we had $1,000 in there. I knew we put a placeholder, I didn't remember what it was. I'm okay with the 500 because I think it's more of, like I said, it's who's on the airport, what they're doing, and the fact that then they understand their business, we're business, and we are gonna have the opportunity to come in and ask questions. So I'm just gonna ask you again, when something like this comes, because these are my questions, they could have been answered in finance, and we could have had this done, had it come to finance.
My assumption here was that it had been through finance in the budget process. This was just the adoption.
Assumption was wrong because it has changed, so it should have come back. If it came back to lease, it comes back. It has dollars attached. I think also then on fiscal impact, we need to say that it would reduce the budget by however much, would you say, $12,000?
I'd have to go back and look at that number, but we
I
started
think
in
that's what you just
January.
verbally told me that.
I think that was, yeah, it's around 12,000 that we have in the budget right now, beginning in January through the end of the fiscal year. So that's about $12,000.
Okay, so just tighten up your reports and let's get it. I'm overall in favor of it, and I don't have a problem with $500 staff. And I think that's, I'm going to say again, it's because of staff time. We can make this so that it costs us $50,000 to manage it if we keep putting pieces on it. I think we make it simple and easy to understand.
Thank you. Director Sabo.
Are we asking questions right now, Mr. Chairman, or are we
I would like to hear
expressing our
your
opinions on
thoughts,
this?
your opinions, and suggestions.
All right. I too am in favor of business license. And as I expressed when we were doing the rates and charges thing, I was very concerned about the impact of, at that time, $1,000 on small businesses. Small in my mind was based on the number of employees. I'm glad to hear there are alternatives that we can implement here to reduce the impact on some of our smaller businesses. Let me ask the question: has this business license been circulated for comment among our businesses on aeronautical land as well as non-aeronautical land?
Yes, we have, staff has had conversations as was directed to interface with the tenants that would be affected, and the reports that I have is they have done that. So yes, it has been.
And what was the feedback? I mean, were there objections, concerns expressed?
I can't address that. I did not get feedback from staff about any concerns related to this, so I don't believe that there were.
Well, I would think the comments from our airport tenants is kind of relevant to our consideration of the matter. Is there some, the way I see this drafted, and obviously we looked at it from other airports or other venues, are these, is there some correlation between the business license in our mind and having a structure or being in a structure? I mean, when we talk about inspections here, if I'm an independent mechanic that is allowed on the field, I have a business license. I don't have a business dwelling that has to be inspected. I still have to fill out the fee. Fill out the paperwork, and that I would list the number of employees I had, and that sort of thing. I'm just an individual entrepreneur. How does the cost of doing this inspection or issuing this business license correlate with the difference between the Jet Center, for example, and a single employee that doesn't even have a building? And that's, you understand my question. I'm not trying to nitpick the whole thing here, but the way the wording is,
That's a great question. So the way that you come at this actually is how do you calculate the fee? Right? That's sort of how we came at this. And the way that you calculate the fee is you look at the entire program, the entire business license program, you analyze how much does it cost total. And you divide that among the number of participants in the program or the number of businesses. You're gonna have for example, I'll use the example you use. You'll have a mobile vendor who will say, well, I don't have a business, so I don't need the inspections, right? But they actually do. They've got registration that they have to meet. They are gonna have to come on and off property. You have additional wear and tear on your roads from them coming on and off every time. As an example, an 18-wheel truck, as I'm told, causes it's the neighborhood of 4,000 times the damage on one trip across the road than a passenger vehicle does. Now you don't see it because roads are made to handle millions and millions of miles of traffic, right? But each vehicle will have a different impact on the road. Each vehicle will have a different impact on your system. Mobile businesses will have an impact because they're going to be utilizing your roads, they're going to be utilizing your parking spaces or your ramp space or your public spaces, depending on where they set up and what the business is. So there still is an impact for this. So you add up all of the impacts and you divide it among all of the users. You don't, in most instances, differentiate among the users. You can have the same argument actually from the Jet Center. Well, we have a building that was inspected just last year. It was inspected a year ago and it complied a year ago. Arguably, it would be compliant today. But that's not how you calculate the fee. You establish as a government entity what the program will entail. In this instance, it's annual inspections from various personnel. There's registration costs, with the business license itself to keep the directory of businesses. There's all kinds of administrative pieces, components to it. There is a police personnel if you have a mobile business where they may need to check up on them from time to time. There's also random, when people call up and say this business is not complying with your ordinances, there are enforcement mechanisms that we also have included in the cost. We added up all of those costs, divided by the number of businesses. That's how we came with it's almost $1,100. That's how we added that up. So you don't differentiate because someone says, well, gee, I'm just a mobile business, so I don't have as much impact. They still have an impact, and we have added that impact into the calculation.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, but I respectfully don't agree. This is not, we're not imposing impact fees. Those are well known in other government, wear and tear on the roads or economic development and all that sort of thing. Those are separate fees. So what we're talking about here, and what the words say that we are imposing these fees in order to recover our costs for processing and inspection, and processing the application and also inspection. And that's what it says, for our purposes, not for assuring that we get recover costs for impact on roads, for example. Am I correct in saying that?
Well, no, all of those costs are actually calculated.
So the truck traffic, any damage they do on it, we're trying to recover that.
We're not trying to recover the road. We're not trying to recover the road, but we are. There is a component in there. Mike, correct me if I'm wrong. There is a component in there for the public safety impact. For police officer, for some police officer hours in there.
Okay.
Not a lot, but it is. It doesn't. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen a lot. I mean, we don't have a lot of those phone calls, but that is in the calculation.
Okay. Moving on, I was a little concerned about we refer to fees that people will have to pay, but we never cite what those fees are, like the CASP, CASP fees and all that. Where are those cited?
So
what I'm going to have to pay.
The only fee that it is, there are two components. One is the CASP fee, which is a state mandated fee for accessibility, for disability access It's a mandatory fee. We don't keep it, we collect it, we pass it on. The other fee
Is
is.
that
the
part
fee-
of the ordinance? Is that going to be part of the ordinance?
It is included in here.
Okay, what is it? Do we have to specify the amount in our rates and charges?
No. No, the
No.
state specifies the amount.
Okay,
The state tells you how much that fee is.
okay,
And
so,
then the other component is the fee that you adopt.
all right. If I'm just a shareholder in a business here on the airport, am I subject to all this disclosure of information about myself, my income, everything that's required on the registration, the business registration form? I don't see any distinction between my being a part owner, maybe a silent partner in this business, and the active business partners that are operating the business. So do I have to does everybody that's involved with this business have to disclose all that?
No, the only thing you have to disclose is what is the entity that's operating. If it's a registered business, we will look up with the Secretary of State, are you registered your business in the state? If you're a corporation, for example, right?
Okay,
If you are a sole practitioner, doing business as, so to speak, then there's nothing to look up. It's just an individual.
You can still look up proof of publication.
You can.
well, I'm
And it
looking
should
at
be
your
current.
definitions, and I'm not trying to, what I'm trying to do is avoid people coming back and starting to question whether things are, they're required to disclose information, whether this is fair, legal, and all that sort of thing. I'm going by your definition, it's called person. Okay, and I was a silent partner in a business here, kind of looked like I had to divulge all my information as well. Personally identifiable information, I had to provide that. So I wouldn't want to have to do that, impose that on our businesses around here.
Okay, personally identifiable information is only applicable to transportation network companies.
Okay, just TNCs.
Yeah, and that's what it says.
Okay. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah, Uber drivers and taxi drivers are not required to provide all this information. That's the obligation of the taxi license holder.
So Uber drivers and Lyft drivers are under a separate contract with the airport. We have an agreement, and I have to pull the agreement to look. I don't believe we have the information on every single individual driver. Having said that, if we have a problem with the driver, I believe, and again, I'm going from memory, I believe our contract says if we have a problem with a driver and we've got, for example, the license plate number, we can contact Uber or Lyft and prevent that driver from coming back to the airport again.
Okay,
And if there's some reason to turn that over to law enforcement, they are required to give that information to law enforcement.
okay. What is a home occupation business? I didn't understand that at all.
Yeah, so this is an anomaly. I tried to eliminate that where I found it. There was so many references that I may have missed one. There are no home, so in a typical, for example, think of a typical city, there are some businesses that are operated out of the home. You have exactly 0 residences in your jurisdiction. So the home occupation does not need to be in here. And we eliminated, I'll use the phrase most of that, because if you're asking about it, that means I missed one. So I'll do a word search for home business. We'll eliminate the home business.
So that's not a concern.
No.
Director Sabo, can
Yeah.
I just very quickly? We've been on your portion of this for over 10 minutes now. And I would ask that we all are in agreement that we're going to put something together here today. So what I would really like to hear are your ideas and thoughts of how to move this forward. I really
Well,
appreciate it.
Okay. I'm trying to clarify my understanding of what we're reading here before I comments about whether I'm in favor of this or not. And, you know, there was things in here that we're not gonna happen in the future, from my concern.
Okay, can we bring it to a conclusion as directly as possible, please?
Sure. If we are going to do an inspection, this is for Mike as well, if we're going to do an inspection, I noticed that there are no notice requirements. So is it anticipated that we're just going to, members of the staff or the fire department just show up unannounced and we're entitled to entry? As opposed to what I'm used to in a rental agreement where I get 24 or 48 hours.
Yeah.
notice.
The leases that we have give us the ability to enter at will. Our practice has always been and will always be to notify. When we do inspections, we work with the tenant to find a time that they can provide us access. Many of the hangars, particularly in NSSI, we do not have keys to, just don't have them. So we need that access. We have to work with the tenant to provide, for them to provide us the access to the inspection. It is not our practice, unless absolutely necessary, to enter into any of the structures on the airport without advance notice.
Okay, I think it would be helpful if we incorporated that into our fee arrangement or our business license thing, that we will give them advance notice. 24 hours, unless there's some reason we want to do surprise.
Here's the reason I would advise against that. That would be inconsistent with the lease agreements. So in order for consistency, you need to keep that. I would suggest that you keep that language in the document with the understanding that we do not use that except in an emergency. We will, without question, work with tenants for access.
The other issue, let's think of this logically for a minute. These are businesses that are open to the public. The public has the ability to come in at any time. And so if they're going to do a full-blown inspection, obviously those are set up in advance. But for individuals, if you think there's some nefarious business going on, you may want someone to just go in and open the door at the business when it says open.
Okay.
I mean, there are legitimate code enforcement reasons for doing that.
So just take the most far-fetched example here. Can I enter that property at 2 o'clock in the morning?
Well,
if I have the keys.
no. So this
Not
is
for this purpose.
so here. Yeah, under this is a business license inspection that we're talking about here. We will never be opening up businesses utilizing keys for a business license inspection or any purpose related to this. Here's what it says in section 1.170, subsection A. For purposes of enforcing the provisions of this chapter, the building and safety inspector, fire inspector, code enforcement, yada, 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 may enter free of charge at any reasonable time, any place of business for which a business license has been granted. I would suggest, and I think I'm on solid ground saying it, unless that business is open at 2 o'clock in the morning, that 2 o'clock in the morning would be an unreasonable time.
And that's kind of accepted terminology.
Yeah.
Of course. And,
Yep.
Okay, all right, that answers my question. Let me make my comment here on this thing. First, I'm in favor of the business license. And I think it's benefits the airport, and I think it benefits our tenants as well. But I'm very concerned about the impact on small businesses here. The example being that we have maybe 3 tenants in a single building, and they're all individuals, maybe maintenance, mechanics. This is something we're trying to encourage here, or we have a training business. flight training. That's something we're trying to encourage and to impose the same $500 fee on each one of those individual mechanics, one person business, as we impose on the jet center, which has multiple employees, lots of structures to inspect. I think it's unfair, and it puts an undue burden on it. So I guess I would like to see at least a graduated fee or an exemption for businesses on aeronautical property that are less than 2 employees to limit it to a maximum of $100 per employee, in my opinion. And so I will propose an amendment to the fee structure to say that any business that has 2 or less employees. By the way, we, on our initial application, and I'm sure in renewals, we will ask how many employees they have. So I don't know that this encourages any additional staff time to go and survey the number of employees they have to answer that question. That anything less than 2 employees is pays a $100 fee, a maximum of $100 fee, and then I put the $500 fee on the other businesses. 2 employees or less, $100 maximum of $100. That would be my proposal.
Okay, my comments are relatively simple, having seen this in the police committee. We did hear additional information today about the possibility of a tiered system. I began thinking that I liked the idea of a tiered system, and it is, as after Director Level's comments, I tend to agree that we don't want to create a monster here in extra work, which ends up in extra money. And so maybe a tiered system is not the best of ideas. What I would like to suggest is, first of all, I don't think there should be exemptions. I feel that if you're one of our tenants, you should pay for your business license. There's no exemptions for the city of Monterey when you own a business, and I don't think we should have exemptions either. So $500 is, I think, a fair number, but I think that to try to maybe ease Director Sable's concerns, I could support a $400 business fee without exemption and without tiers. Any further comments from the directors? Lisa?
Well, I do like the idea of a tier system. I don't know how much extra work that would involve. But I think that's the fairest matrix for having proportional costs.
Chair, let me address that quickly. And the reason that we didn't propose a tiered system,
Sure.
is quite simply fairness. We have tenants on this airport that pay us a ground lease or lease structures from us that are doing business. I think it would be somewhat modestly unfair if we allowed someone who was driving into the work to get even less of a fee structure when we're already asking our grounded tenants to pay us not just ground lease, but now a business license as well. Part of the target for the business license has always been, in my mind, to know who's doing business on this airport. We have people that are driving down from San Jose, major corporations that are doing maintenance on NetJet's aircraft or on ExoJet aircraft. That's their contract service provider. In my mind, if they do business on this airport, they're in the same boat as a maintenance operation on airport. The only difference is the ones on airport already pay us rent and fees associated with their grounded business. So we chose not to do we chose not to have striations in the business license so that it was very consistent for everyone, regardless of whether they were grown.
I have a comment.
Actually, go ahead, actually.
I'd like to respond to that, with all due respect. I kind of understand the idea of protecting our existing businesses here. But we don't have a whole lot of maintenance business on this airport that has a physical presence. We suffer, the general aviation community suffers from a lack of maintenance. They have to go, in many cases, they have to go elsewhere. Anybody that has an airplane that they want to have inspected or something like that, they frequently will have somebody come in from outside to do that inspection. If in fact it's important for us to protect our businesses, then we need an ordinance that says you can't come onto this airport before professional services. And so I guess where I'm going in I don't want to discourage maintenance, but on this airport, we have one mechanic over here in this building over here, and then and one on the other side. And I want to encourage them. They are small businesses trying to get going. We need that business now. As far as the people coming down from San Jose, they may be doing work for the Jet Center and all that. Are they covered under this thing? And then we want them to have a business license and then have them pay the $500 because they're a business. So I don't want to discourage with my amendment here to down to $100 for a small business, 1 to 2 people. I don't want to discourage maintenance on this business, or somebody that does aircraft cleaning and operation. We need those businesses here, and to say you have to pay $500 just like a gentleman does in order to do business on our airport, I think it is anti-business. It is general aviation. So I really oppose that concept of trying to protect our existing businesses, which in the general aviation maintenance business are negligent. Protect them by excluding other people that might not want to take.
A couple things. So Scott, that home business is under 1.090.
Yeah, I did a word search for home and I found it. There are some places where you need it, but very few. For example, there are a few places where the word home is appropriately there, but I will eliminate the references to home businesses.
Yeah, it looks like that whole section, that whole C should
Yep.
go away. And Mike, I asked you if the regards to the fire department with theirs, but then I see under 1.050 that the airport board shall set fees for fire and other regulatory inspections, penalties, blah, blah, blah. So it's not covered. There is an additional fee, is that correct?
No, that would be the board's choice. But to date, we've wrapped that cost into the fee that we're asking you to adopt as a business license. That's just language that is there. It was part of
That's not what
was
it says
crafted.
here. It says, in addition, the airport board shall set fees for the fire and other regulatory inspections, penalties, licenses that are for specific businesses. So in 1.050 under fees, it clearly says that we are going to put additional fees on here.
We can correct that in the document. When we calculated the $1,100 cost, those inspections were in that amount.
So we would not put additional charges for a fire inspection or massage parlor inspections or anything else.
So that is, we've embedded that, we baked that into that.
Get rid of this needs to get fixed also. And I'm gonna go back to the 500 or less or sliding. And I'm just gonna say that I am very familiar with construction business. And if you are a small home remodeler, you have to pay a license fee and pull a business license in every city that you do business in. So our company, a house company, is home based in Monterey. If he works at the Carnival Art Association, which he does regularly, he has to have a license in the city of Carmel, and he has to pull a permit every time he goes there. Did a historic home in PG, he had to have a business license in PG. Just declined one in Marina because he didn't want to have to go get a business license there when he doesn't want to actually work at all anyway. So, but I think that it is not unreasonable. I think a professional business expects it. And I do agree with you, Mr. Lapeer, that if someone is paying us rent on a regular basis and is a regular tenant who is contributing here, that they should, that they're also paying us in other ways, and that it is appropriate for someone who comes in. I'm gonna go back to, if you're charging, I don't know how much per hour or whatever, and you're driving here from wherever to do something, you've got in your fees, it will be covered, and it will be covered by the tenants. And I understand that may be a detriment to a small, small aircraft owner that, my God, now that guy only comes here once a year for just me, it costs him $500 more. But I think it's the cost of doing business, and it's more important, you know, who's out the airport. So I'm going to go back to the cost of, we have to, I think, the cost of doing business with our staff and how much they're going to have to chase this and do this. And I saw, and I think it's just a little, maybe a little crazy in the wording. That, so if I come in with this, are we saying we charge them all on January 1st normally, or choose a date, July 1st or whatever date?
Yeah.
But that if you come in May, that then they'll pay for 1 quarter of that. Is that how I get this?
That's correct.
That's correct.
Okay, it's a little wonky.
Yeah, it's intended, so if you come in, so it starts in, we're doing it with fiscal year.
Starting in January, but we'll prorate to the end of the year, and then the full year will be on.
So everybody will pay 6 months, and then starting July 1st, they'll pay. Yeah.
So that language is intended, so after this is in place, 2 years down the road, I come in and let me pick that one. We're doing it on a fiscal year, so I come in October. I'm gonna pay 3/4 of the annual fee.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Yeah, okay.
But I'm just, take a look at how it's worded, Scott. I think it could be cleaned up a little bit, because it says business license fees shall be prorated quarterly at that time that the business license is issued based on current fee schedule. I just want to make sure that quarterly thing, that people don't think they're going to be allowed to pay quarterly. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
That we make that so that it's very clear, you will be prorated for the first quarter that you're in, but
Then annually.
we're not doing quarterly billing.
Right.
That would be enough to make
Yeah,
for finance department. out of
That's
their
probably a
funds.
good catch. We did not read it that way, but if you did, that tells us that. Yeah,
So just tighten it up. So I don't think we're ready to do this today, because I think it's got to have some changes in it and that we can actually see before we do it and it goes to press. So unless you want to work on it and bring it back after closed session or something, and then.
I can certainly do that.
So I don't disagree with that, but I think we do have to settle on the basic charges that we're going to.
I agree, but I'm
Before we move on, Director Level, can I ask you a question on section 1.050 on fees? That's the last sentence, just before the subsection A, the last, in addition, the airport board shall set fees for, if I just remove fire from that, because we're already charging for fire, there are some businesses where we might have to have an NPDES or some other regulatory inspections that are required based on the nature of the business. I don't think we have any of those businesses at this time, but in the event we do, for example, if you had an aircraft painting company that came in, we would likely have to have some additional regulatory inspections because they're stripping paint off and, you know, and spraying new. So if I just remove the word fire, are you okay with the rest of that? MPDES, other regulatory inspection penalties, supplemental licenses or specific business?
I don't care, but I don't know what else you charge for. I mean, if we're charging for other things, I think we need to
Well,
put it in
at
there.
this point,
I didn't just ask a specific question, got a specific answer, and then found a.
Yeah, fire we will take out. That's, that one should be.
yeah, that's it.
I still have that.
Are you making a
MPDES
motion?
is environmental, it's environmental.
Take the motion.
Yes, I propose an amendment to the section on fees that indicates that for aeronautical businesses of 2 employees or less, that the maximum fee will be $100.
Is there a second to that motion? Seeing none, motion dies. Is there another motion on what the price is going to be? Somebody going to make a motion at 500?
I would move the fee that we adopt is $500 for every and all businesses that are doing business on the river. And that we are requiring business license for that.
Isn't this a function of the rates and charges? It's not, is it part of the ordinance?
Hang on, before we have discussion on the motion, can we see if we get a second on the motion and then have discussion?
Well, I think this motion is out of order because it's proposing a specific fee to be included in the ordinance, and that is a function of our rates and charges, not of this ordinance.
Council?
Well, while that's true, we do need some direction as to how much you would like to charge.
Direction, yes.
Well, yeah, and that can come from a motion. Because what we will do is, once you establish the fee, we will then we will have to then go back and amend the rates and charges. So to me, at this point, we'll have to bring back the rates and charges, which does not have to go through the ordinance process. So I'm fine with it being a motion or not being a motion at the pleasure of the board. We just need to know what you want it to be. And perhaps an easy way to do that is with a motion. If it's just from direction, that's okay. But we just need to know definitively, what does the board want us to do? In whatever form that is. If you want it to be a motion, that's fine. If you want it to be just direction, that's fine. It's the pleasure of the board.
So, just from a legal standpoint, if the proposal from director level is to say $500 in this ordinance, that is okay. That's legal. That means if we change it in the rates and charges in the future, we'll have to change the ordinance. Is that
No.
correct?
That's not what that means. What it means is if she says, we're gonna charge $500 for a business license, then if he receives a second and an affirmative vote of at least 3 members, we will bring the rates and charges back to adopt that number. We will bring it back to you for inclusion of that number.
So this isn't a change to the ordinance.
It's not a change to the ordinance, but it is telling us how much you want it to be.
In the rates and charges you have adopted as part of the budget process, $1,000. You can charge less than that. You cannot charge more. Because that's your adopt without changing that structure. So we can bring back rates and charges to you and reduce that to 500, and you cannot go farther than that without going back and reevaluating and readopting your rates and charges schedule. You can, however, charge less. So what I'm saying is, we don't necessarily need to amend the rates and charges schedule because you're clear to $1,000. you're asking for less than that, regardless of what number you choose. You're less than that, so you're well within the range of spend.
So are you saying that adopting 500 does not require a motion?
No, we need that direction. What
Okay.
Scott is saying is your direction can come in the form of a motion, can come in the form of whatever the board would choose. We need direction on the number. Our recommendation for staff is that you charge $500 per business, all businesses. You want to adopt that recommendation, that would be appropriate.
So director level has made a motion. Do we have a second to director level's motion?
I'll second.
All right, so we now have a motion and a second, and let's have discussion. Go ahead.
So my question is, we were looking at $1,000 for license. Is it going to have an impact to the airport at this point if we do 500 per location?
Minimal. We had budgeted in this budget $12,000 in January. So if you cut that in half, that budget would be $6,000. So the impact would be a $6,000 difference.
And we're just really talking staffing that's already present and employed and things.
We're already doing this work,
Right.
so we're not changing the structure or the tasks that our people do. We're just now incorporating that into a business license. So there's nothing new here.
And
You
I,
are changing the task, because now you're gonna send out invoices.
There is a small, that's true. There is a small component here.
it's additional.
But
From a
in
fiscal-
terms of the inspections, we already do this.
Yeah, I was just gonna say from the fiscal impact, in terms of inspections, you are currently absorbing 100% of the inspection fee right now.
As far as all of this with, as being a business owner, I guess I haven't paid for my license yet, but I paid plenty. Well, I haven't been allowed
Get ready.
to. I would love to, trust me, I love occupancy. I think $500 is very doable for most businesses. I would ask staff to keep an eye or to report back if, if there are concerns with our tenants. I think that would be something that we want to know as a board, but, cost of doing business in California isn't cheap, and, there certainly are quite a few fees overall. So I think $500 to know who your neighbors are and kind of have a more, just to have a more robust system in place for it. I'm in support.
Further discussion. Amanda, roll call vote.
Please read the motion.
My motion is that we, as of January 1st, that we would put in place the $500 business license fee per business.
Is this an amendment to the ordinance, or
No.
is this just a general, what is this?
Can we do it since it's not on the agenda?
Yeah, because it is related to the business license. Yeah. Just what it is, Bill, is just, Director Sabo, it is simply giving staff the direction by form of a motion of what you want staff to charge for a business license. Currently, you have adopted up to $1,000, you got $1,000. And so if there's no further direction and you adopt a business license without any further direction, then staff will be required to charge $1,000 for a business license. This is saying, we want you to charge less. The law allows you to charge less than your actual costs of the program. It does not allow you to charge more. Because you have previously adopted $1,000, this motion will be giving the direction to staff that once the business license program is in place, the fee will be charged as $500.
So this motion is direction to staff, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, why don't we say that?
Well,
The staff is directed to charge $500.
The reason why we don't say that is because Director Level made the motion and the witness made it in similar fashion that you made the motion before of $100 for, you know, 2 or less. I mean, it's a similar motion, although hers is just giving.
Mine was directed at the ordinance, you know, rather than direction of staff. So anyhow, I just wanted to clarify what we're voting.
Roll call vote.
Director Song,
Yes.
Director Level,
Yes,
Director Sabo,
No.
Director Miller.
Yes.
Chair Cristina.
No. Motion carries 3-2.
so for the ordinance of Director or Chair Cristina, can we have our attorney go through and clean up 1090, 1140, and 1160 and the part on fees of the quarterly fees, and then bring that for
Can-
later?
Sure, is that doable?
When you say that, you mean like after closed session?
I don't care when, but to give you time to.
Yeah, I can work quick.
Okay, so let's do
Since you're
this.
gonna have to do it, then you're gonna have to print it so we can look at it.
I'm happy to do that.
So let's bring it back after closed session, when we come back into open session. Okay? All right, moving on to,
And board members, just for clarity, I'm gonna use track changes so you can see the strikeouts.
okay, back to regular agenda items. G, Executive Director, who will handle safety enhancement?
That will be me
Okay,
initially. This
Take it
is, there are, over the course of the next few months, there are a lot of touch points here that you need to be aware of and you'll be involved in regarding the safety enhancement program. As we started to go through at a staff level, all of those, to be quite honest, there are so many that we even got a little bit askew. So we thought it was appropriate that we put together a timeline so that you can follow what we're going to be asking you to consider over the next few months. On the other side is a larger, less specific timeline for the entirety of the program. So it kind of gives you a go-by for current events, things that are going to happen in the near term that we're going to ask you to be involved in, and things that you're going to be asked to make decisions upon in the near term, and then the longer term snapshot of what the process will look like going forward. So there's no action on the part of the board that we're asking today. We wanted to introduce this to you so that you had it and you understood it. And you'll be able to plan ahead for what we will be bringing to you over the next few months. That's the extent of that presentation at this point. So happy to answer any questions you might have about the timeline if you do.
so is it best that we, I think it's best that we ask questions as we go along, rather than
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. I think that's it's the pleasure of the board. If you have questions about this, you can always reach out to me and be happy to answer them. As we go along, this is pretty specific as to some timeline and dates. The one that I will point out is we would like you to entertain a workshop in January. We've chosen a couple of dates that are not set in stone. We need to have that discussion with you, where we roll out some of the work that's underway right now, which is the rates and charges analysis, a phase 3 of the financial analysis, particularly as it relates to the overall program, but focusing heavily on the terminal building. And then the terminal program phase 2, which is, as you recall, we went through the process of talking about sizing versus cost. And we went through a process where we looked at at the peak hour demand and what size building it would take for us to accommodate that peak hour demand. This is the next phase of that, and it gets deeper into just the sizing of the building and not the design. None of this is designed. We haven't proposed that we're hiring an architect at this point. We believe that we need to give you the information that you need to make the decisions going forward that will keep the program moving, or should the board choose, delay the program. So that's what this is about. That's what that workshop is about. And it's a fairly detailed amount of analysis that we're going to walk you through for those 3 components. That's why we asked for a workshop rather than trying to do that at a regular.
Yes.
Sure.
I'm looking at the safety enhancement program 18-month view. So it says on their board workshop, is that supposed to be 2022?
Oops. You're right. It is.
And I know that we conceded to you that it was appropriate to hire the people who were doing the financial analysis on the terminal to also do the pension funding analysis. But I see they're going to deliver now on 12/15, but we don't have. Is that going to incorporate then also what they believe might be the funding for the terminal? Because that was my understanding. Okay. Round, this is fine.
Yes, it will look at that. It will coordinate those so that you'll have a better understanding of the impact of the UAL and the debt, if there is debt associated with that, on the overall financial plan. But then that will be incorporated into what you receive in January at the workshop, which is the deeper dive into the financial plan for the entire program. So yes and no, not a detailed incorporation of the financial plan for the safety enhancement program itself, but you saw some numbers in the discussion of finance committee already. We'll use those numbers and perhaps refine it.
So, 18-month view, it says budget funding analysis, 12/15, GA annual analysis. Are those dates in which it's going to start being performed, or is it a delivery to the board?
Delivery to the
Pardon me?
delivery to the board.
And are we going to make decisions?
That is the intention, yes. For pension funding analysis, you can't make a decision until we present you with what we found. And then the next step would be to engage counsel if needed, as well as engage a financial institution. The recommendation right now is along the lines of it's developing. It's not a full recommendation, but it's developing along the lines of a private placement for debt, similar to what you did with the existing POV, where you didn't issue bonds, you went for private placement of a bond to Umpqua Bank. Because of the size and structure of the UAL debt, we believe that that's probably still the best way to go, but we're not prepared to do that recommendation at this point. But when December 15th rolls around, what we will show you is scenarios that we've looked at and get your feedback on those scenarios, and then ask you to engage counsel that will walk us through the balance, and also engage a financial institution so that we can then negotiate the best deal possible for.
I have a different question. The spending, pension funding analysis and the GA annual analysis. And to set the stage here, staff presents us with information. And I hope there are alternatives of A, B, C, different funding for the pension funds. And I presume for the GA hangar analysis, I'm not exactly sure that needs, probably is something that maybe one alternative is P3, build it ourselves. That's where the existing hangars from, the money out, all that stuff. At 12:15, are we making decisions based upon the alternatives and the analysis that you will be providing to staff and consultants who will be providing to us? Are we going to make decisions that day? I understand bond funding and all that, there's a series of things we have to do. Are we going to make a decision to take alternative A on one thing and alternative B on GA hangar analysis? Are we going to be asked to make that decision at that 12:15?
That will be the pleasure of the board as it relates to the hangar project. That's the pleasure of the board. If you want to make a decision and give direction on where we should go next at that point, you're certainly welcome to do that. We envision it as a presentation for your consideration. At some point, you are going to have to make a decision how you want to handle the hangars. It does not necessarily have to be that way.
And is that the same answer for pension funding?
Absolutely, yeah. We're not going to bring you an already cooked deal. That's not in our lexicon. We will bring you an analysis of alternatives. We will ask you then for your comment, for your input, just like we did the Finance Committee most recently. And then we'll, as then the one thing that we would ask you to do is if you want to move forward, and requires a debt issuance, we would then ask you to engage a bond counsel. That would be the only decision that you would be able to make at that point, because once you decide to move forward in a direction, we still have to make the deal. We still have to negotiate with the financial institution or bond.
There's a lot of steps based on whatever we should say. A lot of steps.
We're not looking for you to.
I think that's important to clarify, because I, as one board member, do not have control over what comes into this agenda packet. And what comes in there is the staff's suggestions as to what the board needs to consider and recommendations to adopt certain things. What I want to see as a board member is the alternatives. I want to see the analysis before I'm asked to vote on that same day. I want to see that ahead of time for both the pension funding and the hangar analysis. So I just wanted to make clear what your intentions as
Heard, understood, and insert.
All right. Thank you.
I want to reiterate, I think the pension funding analysis that we found in the Finance Committee meeting is really a broader conversation, and just, I think you said that it will be included, but I can't speak for the board, obviously, but I know in the Finance Committee, we really got to the point that we needed to understand the larger picture. So I just, that, and then could you, so the terminal architect RFQ in February, the RFQ obviously is request for, yeah, and what is the timeline? How, is that 3 months, 6 months?
Typically that'll be about a 3 or 4 month process.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, and then would we, so we would be looking June?
Probably in June engagement.
Okay, that summer.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
At some point, we are currently in design on the ramp that would serve the tunnel. We do not have funding for construction. you are funded to design. So we're in the process of design.
But designing just the ramp.
Just the ramp. But when you design a ramp with the intention of building adjacent to it, there is coordination that has to happen between the two projects. Everything from utility easements to elevation changes. All of those have to be coordinated, otherwise you'll end up with a building that doesn't fit the ramp or vice versa. So we're going to, at some point, need to engage an architect to begin the design process. We'll start the RFQ process, but understanding that the board still has to say, yes, go, do it. That process can be shut down at any point. We will bring you a contract only after the board says, yes, we're ready to go. So the RFQ process does not commit you to anything. It commits us to evaluating the alternatives of who could be our.
I didn't know the timeline exactly, and I appreciate that. And putting this together is very helpful for me. I appreciate the time that was put into that. I think the larger picture of where we're going, and I think maybe even at our workshop, if we could have a year out, to continue this, and maybe putting in FA timelines too, or the funding plans would be that would be useful for me just to have that too. So thank you.
Dr. Miller.
No, I too appreciate the timeline here and look forward to the workshop.
Further comments? Executive Director, is that it on this?
That'll be it. It was just presentation on the timeline, so you knew what you were looking at, you had the opportunity to provide us with some input. More importantly, you know what's coming toward you in the next few months.
And I too appreciate the way this is put together, easy to read. Thank you for that. Okay, we're going to, would the board members like a 5-minute break before we move on? Let's take 5 and come back with board committee reports. Welcome back. We will move on to board committee reports and acceptance of department reports. At this time, I would ask any board member that has any questions of any of the department reports that are not going to be covered by finance, air service, or lease to go ahead and indicate that you have a question. Seeing none, we're going to move on and start with budget and finance. Director Sung.
We had a good meeting. We had some presenters. We went over our annual audit, which I believe will come to the board next month. And overall, it was a very good review. Things went well, and I think we appreciated LSL's oversight of everything. They did put in the gas fee 78. Is that the right number?
Gas fee
84. Okay, sorry.
that was regarding the leases.
87.
87.
Too damn many.
But it was regarding the leases and putting those in, reflecting that. And then we also reviewed kind of the pensions and some ideas for the funding analysis. And as a committee, we thought it wanted a broader overview of just the financial picture for the airport and where things were going with how we would proceed. And again, I think both Marianne and I discussed that as we looked at the S&P program to include that in December. So I think that will come to the board at that point. And then we also reviewed just the monthlies, the monthly reports as well as any outstanding balances. There's nothing that needs to be discussed here ultimately. Anything to add? Ms. Coleman?
Very good.
No.
Questions for finance?
Yeah.
Dr. Say.
Were there on the, given that the finance committee reviewed the audit report, the audit letter, were there any negative comments, either from the management letter or the audit report itself?
None.
They had no issues, no compliance issues, no control issues. Okay. Given that, with, and I get my guess, numbers also, there, but we have new things related to the UAL and the OPEB. Okay. Are those going to be on the balance sheet with this upcoming report, or you can report that we're going to get in the operating test? Do you understand what I mean?
They
Are they in
did- they
effect
did-
now?
They did audit, they did look at that, and there is a section in the audit that covers it.
Okay, now, are they gonna, this is going to affect the actual balance sheet? We're gonna start seeing UAL things on the balance sheet and OPEB things on the balance sheet, which is part of that, the new gas. Not as in effect now, or not now?
Not as it
Next
relates
year.
to, not as it relates to the audit itself, no. The audit itself does not cause that.
No, they present us with a balance sheet.
Yes.
The balance sheet,
It will be reflected, they did audit it, it is in the document, they have accounted for that in the document, and they've audited it, yes. As they've done in the past, but you won't see a change there.
change to the CSR, OPEB liability and our UAL is going to be identified under the new gas in the balance sheet that's incorporated.
The new gas fee does not impact OPEB liability or UAL. Does not, the new gas fee is related to leases and the accounting for our leases. So 87 is just dealing with leases and the accrual of that value. Does not deal with OPEB. The audit did audit UAL and OPEB.
Yes,
Of course, that will be.
I guess I'm confused because I thought that new requirement was to display these on the balance sheet as well as the other thing we talked about regarding leases.
Director Sabo,
Yeah,
The leases, yes.
there's a voice.
as a standard practice, the net pension liability and its associated deferred inflows and outflows were adjusted. They are presented on the balance sheet as they have traditionally been. OPEB in the same format was adjusted and presented in the financial statements. GASB 87 strictly deals with leases. We can elaborate in detail if you'd like, but it primarily focuses on establishing a criteria for non-regulated and non-exempt month-to-month leases. So those were the items that were specifically addressed through the GASB presentations, but they are in standard form as in the prior years.
Okay, I understand now. And are we going to see 87, going to be 87 displayed in the balance sheet, the company's the.
Yes, it will. 87 will be presented in the balance sheet. And when you see the financial statements, we'll be glad to walk you through them.
Okay, that answers the question. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to move on to air service and please go ahead and take off.
I don't have a
You have nothing to say about air service?
I have a comment. It is what it is. So, take the lead. I will add this comment that we are still getting noise complaints and concerns about traffic, inbound traffic west of the airport. And I personally established that NorCal is, instead of directing traffic to fly noise mitigated approaches or arrivals to the airport, they're in fact asking pilots, which they asked me, it's clear at the airport, what kind of you want to do a visual approach to the airport. And I verified that with 2 or 3 other business jet pilots, that they're not kind of moving our traffic over to the visual approach over the Wilderness Acres track or down Highway 68. So that continues to be a problem. The majority of our air carriers are flying down Highway 68, and Americans flights and Alaska flights are continuing to fly the GPS approach over our neighborhoods west of the airport.
And we talked about our social media program and how it's expanding. We saw some analytics that look very promising. We are absolutely director level concentrating on Facebook as recommended, and we had some good views from Facebook. Look good. All in all, I think it's coming along fine, and we're looking forward to continued progress with that as we move forward. But it is showing promise. We actually are, as you all know, I'm sure, very busy. The parking lots can tell you that, and we had now I'm going to give you a number. We did. This does not include Alaska, because we did not have their numbers for this report. But in September, we had 16,565 employments without Alaska, and which is darn excellent, because with Alaska's numbers, if they were the same as they were showing in earlier months, we'd have been well over 20,000. So again, we continue to be getting, I believe, close to pre-pandemic activity. Is that accurate?
That's very accurate, yes. Yeah, for since June, we've seen no less than 18,000 employments. Peak has been in July over 20,000, or over 20,000 in August. We were darn close to 20,000 in September, and it looks like October is going to be in that same category. So those are good numbers, pretty close to where we were pre-pandemic.
So I would like Executive Director Lapierre to do the air service, because it was a little complicated. There are some changes as far as flights, and I'd like you to address that as we address it.
Sure. We do know that American will be stepping up their capacity in the market around the holidays. That's in response to our ability to secure some travel dates from the military. So they'll be adding capacity to help accommodate that. That would, hoping is that we will have 3 daily to Denver or to Dallas and 3 daily to Phoenix. We're seeing a 4th daily to Phoenix already in the system. We haven't found the 3rd Dallas yet, but that's what they told me they will be doing. They're also upgrading the aircraft to Phoenix from the CRJ 900 to the 175, which is a preferable aircraft. Those are starting to come online in Phoenix, and we're going to see the benefit of those as well. Alaska, until yesterday, had a second flight to Seattle. They decided to pull that back. They see a softening in traffic, so they pulled that back and will come back to us in the summer. They have also indicated to us that in April, a second daily San Diego flight will arrive. So come summer, we'll have 4 daily departures on Alaska to Seattle to San Diego. We are losing the Portland flight on Allegiant at the end of this year. Its performance has been somewhat suspect. And much of that we attribute, although the carrier may not always agree with us, we attribute that to poor schedule and poor performance on their part. We took an entire month off in the name of maintenance on their aircraft, so they didn't fly that during the month of September. They are back flying it now. They will fly Portland through the end of the year, and then it goes. I think that's it.
So did you have an opportunity to have any discussion with Alaska about maybe improving the times of the Seattle flight?
I did.
7 p.m. in the evening is not
No, I did. And
very
what they told
conducive
me
to
is-
filling the airport.
What they told me was that they worked really hard to get us a second frequency. They didn't have the ability to move it earlier, but they did commit that come the summer schedule, they're going to look at the entirety of their system here and their schedule here. We talked about a mid-morning turn, which is an arrival and departure, and then a mid-afternoon turn, which is an arrival and departure. So they're looking to improve their schedule and be responsive to that come summer, we're going to see some pretty good capacity from Alaska.
So I would mention that Executive Director Lapierre and our consultants continue to pursue additional routes. We have nothing to report on that today, but we continue to move forward on it, and just stay tuned and we'll get you in the loop as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Sure.
I saw your memo to us, Mike, but when is Alaska pulling that second flight?
I believe it's at the end of this week.
Oh, so it's quick. Okay, I wasn't sure, because I know Allegiant gave us till December 3rd.
Yeah, I just did. Alaska they started the flight October 4th, and their intention is to pull it down. The advanced bookings have not been good. They do not look solid. So I frankly think it's a good move on their part, understanding that they're coming back in the summer and we can launch it correctly and a good time to do it. Makes sense.
Well, and I sent to Mike and Scott what I read in one of the airport publications, but that the United that pulled out of Sonoma, and they pulled a ton of flights out of San Francisco and San Jose, but they pulled Sonoma to Denver, and we were able to keep Denver. So it looks like they really did an overhaul of their whole system, and I'm grateful we were able to keep the one daily flight that we have, although it continued. The one thing you hear about is I love going to Denver. I just hate that one. That is what everybody has a comma and a but after they say they love going to Denver. I'm United. So, I think United can do themselves a big favor if they would do that. And then the other thing is you work with Alaska, particularly on San Diego and Seattle. What we found before in the summer months, particularly, is when people are doing the Alaska cruises, to have that so that it can coincide with getting people so they can get off the plane and get to the cruise ship. Because that's either whether they go in the night before or they go in that morning. And I'm not a big cruise person, but I know that there's like time when you get on the boat and you take off. So just that's something I think is really important if they want to have that summer travel for people from here.
I think they accommodate that if they do a midday turn. If you get into Seattle, I think only done one cruise out of Seattle.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time between you with the voice and a mask and thinking.
I think the midday turn would accomplish that, and the mid-morning turn, because I think you get on the boat at 3 o'clock. So if we got there at 11:30, plenty of time to get down to the.
Okay, well, I don't know, and you have to do your research, or have a consultant do it, but I do know that that was an issue. And then the thing on Portland, that was just so erratic. That it, and you know, I know friends who were stranded, and then when they took that month off, they had 2 tickets that month, 2 different flights, and then they couldn't take it. So I just, Allegiant kind of dirtied the water on that whole deal. It really kept anybody else out of that market when we might have a chance to grab somebody. So
Yeah, we think that they probably have improved market because the numbers for twice weekly were not bad. If you extrapolate out to daily service, which would be our target with Alaska, we think the Allegiant numbers actually improve the markets there. And because of their unreliability and their erratic nature of scheduling, they really did sour the market a bit, but it's there.
that's all.
Director Miller. It's the same thing, good report, good direction for air service returning here, so I like seeing those numbers going up. Yeah, I too believe that Portland would be a great connection for us, just with a different carrier. I think Alaska is probably poised to be the best delivery of service up there. And I always thought, and although you don't see it too much anymore, a direct flight where it would be Monterey, Portland, Portland, Seattle, Seattle, Portland, Portland, Monterey.
Yeah, can't argue that that would be a great app. They do so many flights a day between Portland and Seattle. 14, I think it is. But most of those are down on the Q400 aircraft.
Right.
You know, typically fly on 175 on that and use the smaller aircraft and turboprop aircraft. So we probably won't see that, but if they start looking at the 175 between Portland and Seattle, it makes sense.
Okay, very good. Thank you for the report.
Thank you. Director Miller, while you're hot, why don't you take us through the lease?
Well, I mean, we spent a great deal of time talking about the business license, so there's no sense rehashing that. I'm trying to think, did we have anything else that we talked about?
We talked about the J&J.
Yeah, we lost a couple clients, J&J.
We talked about exploring the opportunity to raise that building and the one immediately adjacent to it because of their conditions. We talked about that. And
Any update on that? So J&J Auto Repair, we've lost. You are, with the help of legal counsel, exploring any contaminants that may have been left behind, which is not untypical for auto mechanic shops that have been in locations for many, many years as they have. So what are the preliminary findings? Anything?
don't have any as yet.
Any questions for Lisa?
Is that the gentleman that was in trouble with the law?
It was, that was Mike Sauerbach.
I'm sorry,
That was Mike's auto body.
okay.
Yeah.
And that one is still in business?
I don't believe so. They're a subtenant over there. I don't believe Mike's is in business. But they may be. I'll have to look. For some reason I recall them shutting the doors.
Have to buy a automated business license?
Yep.
Thank you. Anything from ad hoc?
No meetings as of yet.
Okay.
Has there been any response to the letter we sent to Delray Oaks asking for a resurrection of the ad hoc?
We are
Government affairs
discussions process.
Okay, okay, thank you.
All right. Director Leffel, do we have time for this? I'm just kidding. LAFCO.
LAFCO, I have about 2,500 pages I'm plowing through, 250 or so on the latest report that was released last week. And we have a closed session on Friday with the consultant on the 250-page report. And then we will go to a full hearing, open the full hearing on whether or not the Water Management District will have the ability to annex 58 lots that are currently in the CalAm service area. And that's number one. And number two is whether or not we grant them latent powers to be a delivery water region. So that will open at 4 o'clock on Monday. It is open to the public by Zoom. And as of yesterday, I know that I got 50 some email copies, and I was told that there were another 40 or so that had come in after they compiled those. So the format, I believe, will be that our consultant, the third party review of both the CalAm property valuation and the Water Management District valuation. Like, we'll have a third party review of that. And then Water Management District will have a period of time to speak, and then CalAm will have a period of time to speak. So it will be an interesting meeting, and then of course it will be open to the public. More comments. So we're just trying to work the best that we can. Pete and I are both elected by the districts. So our obligation on that commission is to do the best that we can for all of the districts. And there are, I believe, 29 districts that are impacted in some way financially, down to $1 for SBMH. I think we as a district are $147.16. So the thought from staff is that anyone who is impacted $5,000 or more would be asked to sit down with the Water Management District and work out mitigation. And if they don't want it, they can decline it, but that gets whether or not they want to spend the time to sit down for $5,000 or not. But some of them are very substantial. The school districts are in the millions. The CAL FIRE is it's a full firefighter a year to them, which is significant. So, and there's no way to backfill that. So it's going to be interesting, and we'll see how it goes on Monday. I'm open-minded. I just want to do the best thing I can for the districts. So we'll see. And a few of the cities are going to get hit.
Yeah, that's the one question I have for the work. Cities will get also, and the county has. how many?
County is about $18 million.
It's like 80 million over 20 years.
It's significant. So we really do need to be fair to everybody. And I'm just going to say this: a comment was made. Well, everybody's going to have to suffer some pain, but the point is that for me, if you finance one thing, give one thing the opportunity to go forward, and then everybody else has to raise their rates and fees because they got hurt financially, it doesn't really do the public any good. And I don't think anyone looked at that prior to last October when the office brought forward for our staff to look at. So it's going to be interesting. I think everyone believes that no matter what decision LAFCO makes, there will be a lawsuit, and that it could be in the courts anywhere between 3 and 10 years as it goes forward. So I believe my responsibility to everyone in the community is to, whatever we do, make it so clear that whoever is sitting there in 7 years or 10 years or 5 years, because it won't be me, that they will have a clear guidance of what our thoughts were. And you know, I'm that way on board reports. but that it has to be clear so that people understand why did we do that, and that it also, if they need to enforce something, they got the teeth in it to do it. And it's not just a guess of what we were thinking. So that's how I'm approaching it.
So one basic question, according to their meeting last night, the initial consultant's report said this was a profitable concern moving forward for the district to take it over. Did that include them reimbursing you money for taxes?
No.
Would that alter their decision? Because we're talking tens of millions of dollars.
I think in the scope of things, they thought it was not enough to make a difference. One of the things was the cost of litigation. And, whether it costs 20 million or 30 million or 50 million to litigate and how far out it goes. And that was one of the things that he thought might skew it. So I haven't heard him. I've only heard staff's interpretation of what he has said. So I'm kind of like this right now, and I just want to hear what the consultant says. And I'm through about 180 pages of the 250, so I've got some reading to do. So, anyway,
Mr. Chairman, can we move forward on it? Thank you, Director.
The one other thing I will say is that FORA is still not dissolved, and it is not resolved on what's going on with FORA. So the county is still, and this goes back to this water thing, Bill, that the county is still trying to pour through FORA's records and figure out what the obligations are that FORA had. And I think that crazy unfunded liability is just growing while everybody works on it. So it's going to be interesting to see, but I want you all to be aware, we have not solved FORA yet. And that was supposed to have been done now 2 years ago.
Thank you, Director.
I know that there's no regional taxi report. Director Sabo, is there a TAMC report?
No report. They did really conduct much is now the
Can I just add something?
Sure.
So I went to the ribbon cutting for the new MST bus maintenance facility in King City on a week ago Monday. And it was well attended by all of our elected representatives, to include our congressmen. And one of the things I think that Senator Caballero pointed out, which was significant, is that the new buses are all manufactured in the state of California, which is really, I think, a really good piece for all of us to know that it's U.S. made and it's transporting. But the facility is beautiful, and they were able to get a TIFIA loan on that for 35 years at 0.78% financing. So $8.4 million. So that's it was a really good partnership with MST, TAMC, DOT, and the city of King City primarily. So and it was good to be down there. I was very happy to be there.
Special districts, anything else?
Well, we had a great meeting last night, very informative. The resolution that we talked about for that the governor signed, have we done that at our?
Not sure which resolution.
Describe it better than I am.
Yeah, if you talk about the request for funds,
No,
what are you talking about?
we're not eligible for the fund.
The Brown Act resolution.
Brown Act resolution. For meetings, yeah.
Yeah. That's in part the reason that we went back to in-person meetings.
Okay.
And I think that was part of Gary's statement from him. We're back to as close to Brown Act provisions as we can. We're not recommending to at this point that you take that step.
Okay. Thank you.
Else? Mr. Lawson, anything to add?
Yeah, I think Senator Caballero did a great job last night, really outlining what she's been working on and how it impacts the district. So I thought it was really good meeting.
Okay, thank you. Executive Director, anything from MPAD?
Just briefly, we had a meeting a week ago tonight. The principal point of presentation was the regional housing needs analysis. That's about it. It's a long process, so it's just an update. The state did give the region their allocation for housing needs, and the analysis that they used assigns a much more significant number of houses in the region than what was incorporated in the last 10-year program. It'll have a significant impact on the city of Monterey. Tripling the number of houses that will be selling to the city of Monterey. So it'll be interesting to see how the communities in the area and the region deals with the housing needs that are being assigned by the state. But it's an ongoing process. So.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a comment. What this assignment by the government to provide for affordable housing is having an impact on everyone. Because as the requirements to meet those affordable housing cities like Salinas are moving to the cheap seats, the cheap dirt right next to the airport, like we saw out there on Garden Road. And Salinas, they're converting hotels or motels that are near the flight path and allowable under airport land use commission rules. They're converting them to residential housing, and I think that's kind of sneaking the nose under the tent. We're going to see more of it here in Monterey, and they're going to see more of it in Salinas, which makes for significant impacts for safety and noise for residential housing. So I think I'm just raising that as an alert for the staff to be aware of what's going on, because it's going on all over the state right now. And I'm moving towards the airports because it's not a NIMBY issue.
Painfully aware of that.
To follow up on that, what's happening on Garden Road that's been put on hold?
No,
There's no water.
They have a water issue that needs to be resolved. So they have not resolved it.
The water that they were promised is not coming. The water that they were promised by the district director is not coming. Hence. Okay, thank you, Executive Director. What I'd like to do with the permission of the other directors is I'd like to get us taking care of this ordinance 928 before we go into closed session. Thank you, Scott, for being so prompt on this. Director Ruffle, I'm going to let you kind of take the lead on this because you were requested most of these changes, so please help us out.
So, thank you, Scott, because I see you put track changes so we can all see or know the changes. So, are you good with it on the home piece? I'm good with it on the fees and on the home. I think those are all the places that I saw that need a little loving attention. So I could move forward on ordinance 928. I move that we adopt it.
We have a motion. Do we have a second to Director Lovell's motion? We have a second.
I'll second.
Further discussion?
If I might, I want to just point out on the map that I just pointed out, Director Sable asked the question as to what the pink boxes were. I wanted to just clarify that two things. One, the area that is covered by the business license ordinance is the area with the surrounding pink line with the 3 white dashes on it. It's referenced there at the bottom. The pink boxes are being removed by Chris right now, so we take her a few minutes to do it. She's removing the pink. It comes from the ALP, and it identified different businesses and only certain categories of them. So she's removing those boxes right now. It's gonna take her a few minutes. But I wanted to get that to you with the addition of the text on the bottom, so it's crystal clear that it's the area within that surrounding line with the pink line with the 3 white dashes.
It doesn't affect the portion.
I just want to make that clear. So
Well,
it's
it
on
does, because it's the attachment that'll go in the
Yeah,
paper.
I want to make sure that it's on the record.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yes. I have a comment. I still oppose this ordinance, detrimental to the basic function of the airport to accommodate aircraft maintenance and other aircraft activities such as training. It's detrimental to the establishment of small businesses and maintenance of small businesses. And I think it's, notwithstanding all of the good work that our council has put into it, I think it's poorly crafted for application. And we have not received any feedback that from our tenants on the whole thing. And I would have liked to have heard feedback from our tenants because I think there's going to be some real issues in enforcing this thing. So I will vote against this adoption of this ordinance as it currently reads.
Amanda, roll call vote.
Director Sonny?
Yes.
Director Lovell?
Yes.
Director Sabo?
No.
Director Miller?
Yes.
Chair Crisio?
Yes. Motion carries. All right, we're gonna close open session and go into closed session. Welcome back to regular session. We will reconvene open session. Scott, anything to report from closed session?
There was no reportable action taken in closed session.
Thank you. Do we have any requests for future agenda items from board members? Seeing none. That's it, isn't it? Very good. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.